everyone, my name is Christina Elbar and I am an author, and I wanted to talk about one of the darkest periods in my life when I struggled very deeply with depression and how I got over it. And no, this title is not clickbait. Dragon Ball Z did help, but there were some other things too. But even if you're not a fan of the show, I can clue you in as to why what happened made such a difference. My very first job was Target, and I did not like it, and we called it the place where dreams go to die. You worked as hard as you can. They made sure you were really well trained, but it didn't seem like you got rewarded for it. I unloaded the trucks, and put everything, and stocked the store, so it was really hard work and, intensive labor every day. And I was a really good worker. My coworkers knew it. My bosses let me know, and I was convinced I was gonna get a pretty good raise on my, when my year review came along. And everyone's like, "Nah, they gotta figure it in. They give everybody the same raise. They might give you something different year 2, but year 1, everybody gets like the same thing." I'm like, "No, I'm great. You don't know. You don't understand." Poor my naive self, you. And so when I got it, it was like 8 cents. And it ended up being more than 8 because they took away the money incentive for coming in earlier than 8 o'clock. So they rounded it out to 16. So they took away money and gave me just a tiny bit more that wouldn't make up the difference. I cried in front of my bosses, and I'm like, the literal blood, sweat, and tears I put in this job, and you're telling me it's like 8 cents? So it really hurt me. And so that was like the first deep stain of reality seeping in of adulthood. I mean, that wasn't the first, but I mean, that's one of the core things you experience having a job where people don't appreciate you. And so I'm just talking about Target from the time I worked. I don't know how it is now, but my sister also worked there longer than I did. And they would hire in people fresh out of college, no experience, to be managers because they didn't have to pay them as much as people working their way up. And there were situations where my sister actually had to train people above her. And so it was one thing to see how I was treated, but there was, it was hard being a bigger sister and seeing, my younger sister treated that way. And so it was really, really hard. But at the same time, that was just a thing I had to do for the meantime, and I had this dream. I had a huge dream. It was huge. And I wrote Super Kid. It was my first book that I published, and I came out with it while I was there. I did have some great coworkers who actually came and support me. I have a set of them that still support me to this day. Thank God for you guys. I believed that this was gonna pop off, and this was my destiny to be a great author. And so at the same time, I had this incredible dream. I had this crushing reality, and my dream wasn't strong enough. It was strong enough, but it didn't manifest enough in reality to sustain me. So even when I went to a cool Comic-Con or something, I had the time of my life, made some sales, people, said how much they loved it. I'm feeling myself, feeling good. The weekend gets over, and Monday you're back, stocking stuff. So the dream I had was crushing me. And so I had to deal with that. And at the same time, my family had some financial situations going on, and we were living in a hotel, a family of 9 people. and it wasn't like we all got a room or something like that. I was sharing a room with 4 or 5 people. And it was hard. And one of my sisters "Oh, we bonded. We was so close together." I'm like, "I don't like you people." It was a really, really hard time. And I would come home from work, and I would immediately just start typing on my computer. I was hoping I could just type myself into a new reality. And that's all I would do. I'd work, and I would just try to fix this reality I was in by just typing, and hopefully that could push us out of it. And since it was all I was doing, I gained a lot of weight, and I didn't complain to people, but people could see I was down and depressed, and I just couldn't see a way out of it. And so a friend of my dad's took some sympathy on us in our situation. And he worked for Wells Fargo, and he said that he had an opening. Specifically, Wells Fargo was looking for people of color. Funny story, they actually got like sued in a lawsuit for discrimination later, but that's a different story. But at the time, he wanted some names. My dad gave him my cousin, my oldest sister, and my sister Sabrina, who worked at Target. So she left Target to go have a much better career, even though it ended up being temporary. And I was still there at Target, and I was the only one left. And I tried to get jobs other places, and nothing was popping off, and I felt so stuck and so trapped. I'm from a very religious family, and I didn't want to talk too much about depression because people would say things like, you rebuke that in the name of Jesus, that's a spirit coming against you, and yada, yada, yada. I didn't need to hear things like that. I know I'm not supposed to feel this way. I know I'm more than a conqueror. I know I'm the head up, not the tail. I know the righteous has never been forsaken, yada, 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 but I can't shake this. And even though I'm such a mentally strong person, my mind and my will is the cage that I'm trapped in. It was an excruciating hard time, and then one of my managers committed suicide, and my sister went to the funeral, and she came home crying, and he was a very creative guy, a young guy with a young family, and he seemed happy, and no one saw it coming, and Miss Sabrina was like, we gotta get you out of Target, we gotta get you out of Target. That did not help. That did not help me at all. I couldn't take it anymore, and I just had to confide in someone. And so I talked to Tina, who is my youngest sister. I just let it all out. I told her how I was feeling. I told her I was suffocating. I told her how hurt I was, how, and just how I've been feeling. So Tina is listening very, very carefully, and she just says, you know what? You're a lot like Vegeta. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm like Vegeta? And so I was so insulted that my whole life story and my pain, my very real pain, that she just related it to an anime character. And she's like, and I'm like, I'm not Vegeta. What are you talking? I'm not Vegeta. And she's like, you're like Vegeta. You're like Vegeta. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And she didn't say anything else. She just kept saying, you're like Vegeta. And then she walked away, and that was the end of the conversation. I didn't know what to say or what to think, but then eventually it was like God anointed the words that she spoke, and it was like it just broke within me, all of the anguish and the turmoil and the heavy burdens of my dreams just sort of drifted away. And so for those of you who do not know about Vegeta, Vegeta is the Saiyan Prince on Dragon Ball Z. Saiyans are a proud race of warriors. He was sold off to this more evil warlord named Frieza in order to save his planet and his people, but they ended up destroying all of them anyway, so he became basically an endangered species. And he always had this dream of growing up and becoming a Super Saiyan and avenging his family and avenging his father, avenging his people. So he finally meets this guy named Goku, who is a Saiyan, but he didn't remember he was a Saiyan because he had come to Earth and he had hit his head as a child, and he grew up to be this, kind, loving guy, but still very strong. And so Vegeta and Goku go at it, and Goku actually defeats him with the help of his friends, and Vegeta's totally humiliated, and they both get stronger, but Goku gets incredibly stronger, and he sees that he's on the path to being a Super Saiyan. And so this is really devastating because this low-level nothing who does nothing about their pride and their heritage is getting this massive inheritance, basically, that the Prince of all Saiyans should be worthy to have. And so Goku is the one who ends up defeating the great enemy Frieza that Vegeta had been trying to defeat all of his life. And so after that's done, Vegeta is obsessed he's pretty much obsessed with Goku for the rest of the series. But he's obsessed with beating him and obtaining Super Saiyan so he can be the strongest that there is. And so he comes to Earth, engages in this basically suicidal tour to be a Super Saiyan. And he fights and he trains until the point where he almost dies. And he's distracted by some pretty Earth women. He goes off to space and he really, really trains. And one day there's a storm and he's worn his body so much that he can't even like blast off all these asteroids and protect the ship. And if he doesn't do that, he's gonna die. And so he's trying with everything he can to survive, and he gets pummeled by this huge asteroid. And after he barely survives that, something in his brain just clicks. Something clicks and he decides, you know what, I don't care anymore. I don't care about being Super Saiyan. I don't care about the rivalry. I don't care about anything. I'm good. And so when he was able to finally let go, that's when the transformation triggered. So within deep thoughts, perhaps young Tina was correct, that, you know, maybe I'm a little bit like Vegeta. He still worked incredibly hard, you know, throughout the Dragon Ball Z and Super and GT, whatever, to become stronger and always go to the next level. But that crazy desperation that he had, he never quite got to that point again. But, you know, I have a dream. And even to this day, it's not exactly where I want to be, but I'm still very grateful for all the success that I have had. You know, I just turned 30 this year and I finished 30 books and I've got to travel across the country and it's been a really great time. But you can't allow yourself to be so burdened with glorious purpose, as Loki, the god of mischief, would say, to the point where it starts to destroy you. You know, you've got to let your dream elevate you and not crush you. So I still work hard, I still write, and I believe in myself. So, you know, we moved out the hotel. I worked at Target a little bit longer, but I did end up getting another job, and it was a better job, and that job prepared, just like Target prepared me for the next job, you know, that job prepared me for something else too. And so it was all stepping stone. It was a stepping stone with like a little tack sticking up on it. But I went on to bigger and better things. So my advice to people would be, you have to trust in God's timing. You have to, or the universe if you don't believe or whatever, but you have to trust everything happens for a reason, and that, you know, time and chance happens for us all, and you just have to be ready when that time and chance happens. And so, but I really want to say, you open up to somebody, don't keep it all locked inside. And lastly, I want to say, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for not being the person that you want to be, because it's keeping you from going where you need to go. And you can't go there with that burden on your back. So believe in yourself. You're gonna be great one day, and you just have to work, but don't let the dream kill you. Be like Vegeta and let it go.